Let's talk about how to fix Congress. Like, Lambdog just made a comment on one of my videos that summed up some of the stuff that I guess I missed. I didn't miss it. I just forgot to say it because I was saying so much other shit. But there's two big problems in our country, and one is the runaway executive branch, and the other is Congress. And some of the issue with Congress is the only way to fix Congress is to have Congress to vote to fix itself, which it'll never do. And this is where maybe we should use some of these runaway executive powers to just fucking say it by, what do they call it when they do that? Forget what it's called. Executive mandate, whatever. Where the president just writes something and signs it and it becomes law. They've been doing that a lot lately in the last 20 years or so. And in my opinion, none of it's really constitutional. So what's one more or two more? And the stuff that I would do would be, I don't know, term limits for Congress. Congressmen can't insider trade. Like, it's a huge problem that they can have knowledge of upcoming legislation or other things, just knowledge of any kind, really, that anyone else, if they had that knowledge, would not be able to buy said stock or participate in the stock market. But yet, because they're a congressman, it's perfectly fine too. That's why we have Nancy Pelosi stocktips.com. Then we have a huge problem with lobbyists and the amount of influence that they have over Congress. And the way people usually become lobbyists anymore is they go and get a House seat for a term or two, and then whenever they get out, they get a nice cushy job as a lobbyist because they know everybody on the Hill and they can go and peddle their influence. I think that congressmen and senators should listen to the people that elected them, and it shouldn't cost them money to be fucking heard. Like, craziness, I know. We gotta end that shit too. I guess we could throw in the Supreme Court with this too. Is I think the fact that the Supreme Court doesn't have term limits is like a double-edged sword. If you get a good court, you have it for a long time. If you get a bad court, you have it for a long time. And I can see the argument for that, Lambdog, but I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on that. I could go either way. That's not really what this video is about, though. This video is about Congress. And the situation in the House in particular is so fucked up that they will never vote to fix it themselves, as far as I can see. And if you are going to truly limit presidential power, I would do so instead of, right at the beginning of your term, solving the executive power bullshit. I would put limits on presidential power, executive power at the end of my term after using all of those powers that I could to bring about changes in Congress. And maybe some of that shit gets struck down by courts later. Maybe. If you really have both houses of Congress and the will of the American people and the head of the party that you are, like, maybe you could force Congress into taking votes on, term limits, and, you can't be a lobbyist for X, or just don't have lobbyists. That'd be nice, but I don't think you're going to do that. But especially keeping congressmen and senators from becoming lobbyists the day they step out of office would be nice. I don't know. There's a whole lot of shit to the Congress ball of wax. That's why I didn't bring any of it up. It's kind of boring. But I would settle for getting rid of senators or congressmen who are in power for 30, 40 years. That's ridiculous. Joe Biden should never happen. Joe Biden's literally been a congressman or a senator for twice as long as I've been alive. That's kind of some horse shit. So term limits. And then, as I said, the whole insider trading thing, I don't know exactly how you would enforce that, but I think, we have the FEC that, investigates all of Wall Street. Maybe we would need a separate branch of that to investigate Congress just constantly, because even if we change the law on this, what's to prevent them from just continuing to do it and hiding it? So you would have to have a law saying that Congress people could be brought up on charges of insider trading, and then you would have to have some sort of way to enforce that law. And if you could get that done, then we'd worry about the lobbyists, because really those other two things to me are much, much bigger deals than the lobbyists. It's a travesty that lobbyists have the amount of power that they do in our states, but at the end of the day, how do you make it illegal to go and talk to congressmen? How do you make it illegal to, collect a consulting fee or some sort of shit like that? Like, I think that would be, weird waters to tread into constitutionally. I'm not sure there's really a legal constitutional way to get rid of lobbyists. But you could definitely keep former congressmen and former senators from just becoming lobbyists on the day they leave office. And I think that would help the problem immensely. It'd be really nice for Trump to get some of this shit fixed, especially while he may or may not have control over the House and the Senate. Like, even if he has the votes technically, with all the Republicans being in the House and Senate, how many of them are really going to vote to limit their own power and make more laws against themselves? I would say you'd be lucky to get a fourth of Congress to vote on this shit, and that's where we have 3 branches of government for a reason. And executive order, that's the term I couldn't remember before, but Jesus, I don't know why I memory hold that one. If you did sign the shit into law as executive orders, and then maybe had it ratified by the Supreme Court somehow, and then put stuff in motion in Congress to get real laws passed, I would be for that, simply because it's one branch of government checking another. I'm not sure that's really constitutional either, but, again, we've passed how many fucking executive orders in the last 20 years? What's 1 or 2 more? I'd really like to see Trump's last act as president be to severely limit the powers of the executive branch. I don't know exactly how you would do that, but if you made it an executive order, the next president could just undo your executive order. And maybe you could get that through Congress. Like, that's more likely to me than them checking their own power would be them checking the president's power. It would be nice to get all of this shit fixed, though. The thing that I'd really like to see for the Supreme Court would be getting, what's his name? One of the Supreme Court justices that's a Republican or on the right side has a lot of shit where he goes and hangs out with billionaires and has vacations and shit for free. That somehow doesn't seem right to me. Like, the amount of free shit and or money that can be given to a Supreme Court justice, I think we should have some sort of limit on that shit. We should have that well before we have term limits on the Supreme Court. I kind of like that the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment, simply because it's like a lasting impression of the government of days gone by influencing the future. It makes the Supreme Court to where, when they interpret the constitutionality of something, it's not from the perspective of whoever's in charge today. It's from whoever was in charge 20, 30 years ago in some cases. But I do get where that could totally go fucking bad. And if I did have a term for the Supreme Court, I think I would make it a long one. Make it 25 years, something like that, 20 years. Whereas, like, the House and the Senate, I don't know, they have different term lengths, so that affects that. But I don't think you should be in the House of Representatives for longer than, 10 or 15 years. I don't think you should be a senator for longer than, about the same amount of time, like 3 terms. Let's say 3 terms for a senator, and let's call it 16 years for the House, which would be 8 terms. So 8 terms in the House, 3 terms in the Senate. I think that's reasonable. You could even go harsher than that. You could go 2 terms in the Senate and like 4 terms in the House, but I don't know. I don't know where you would want to make that line, and this is where things would start getting sticky when you have Congress involved in making their own rules. Is there'd be fucking senators and congressmen going, okay, we'll have term limits. It'll be 18 terms in the Senate and 129 in the House. How's that sound? Something crazy like that. I really don't think they should have control over their own, several things really, but over their own term limits, over their own pay, and over their own rules dictating what they can and cannot do. As far as like accepting money from people and investing illegally, like Nancy Pelosi. Like, I really feel that the only place that the president should be able to make law is in regards to Congress. And I think that would take a constitutional amendment, but maybe we should fucking have one. Because in reality, there's no check on their power there. I think there's some of this where like the Senate makes the rules for the House and the House makes the rules for the Senate, but like, come on. Those people all know each other. There's some tit for tat going there. I don't know how we do a lot of what you proposed, Lambdog. I'm for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for it. I'd love to see a video on from you on what you think about what should be done to Congress in particular. The powers of the president, I think it's pretty obvious. It needs to go back to the way things were, and a big part of that would be passing some sort of law through Congress and the Senate to limit presidential power, and really to take away the, what do they call that? The thing they passed after 9/11. The Patriot Act. I think we should just get rid of the Patriot Act altogether. But no one wants to do that. Try finding a majority in the House or the Senate that's going to revoke the Patriot Act. Now, this is where my train of thought keeps leading me back to, when the Romans had a republic and the republic was in crisis, they would appoint someone to run the government for the length of the emergency. And of course, the famous quote is always, and the last person they appointed, his name was Caesar, and he never gave up his power. Just like in Batman. And that's true. But it doesn't change the fact that when your political system becomes so corrupt that it can't be trusted to vote on its own laws, what do? This is where maybe making some executive orders that affect Congress would be a stopgap measure until longer-term solutions could be found. That's why I don't hate Trump having runaway executive power. The last, 4 or 5 presidents have had that. And I think of all of them, Trump is the most likely to actually fix that shit at some point. Maybe he actually has a chance to do some good with that power, whereas the likes of Bush, Obama, and Biden did horrible things with that power. I don't know. As someone that doesn't like the level of executive power that we have, I'm torn between we should definitely fix that and, well, maybe we should use it just one last time. You know? I'd love a VR for this, Lambdog. I'd love to hear your thoughts in a video format deeper on how you would actually fix these woes, the woes of the executive branch, Congress, and the judiciary. Like, they all three have problems. They all three need reforms, clearly. How are you going to do that, and who's going to do it? So I would put it to you that even with the election going as well as it has gone, you might be able to get Congress to pass some shit about the Supreme Court. You might be able to get Congress to pass some shit about the executive branch. But they're sure as shit not going to limit their own power or put term limits on themselves or cap their pay. Like, the pay for congressmen and senators, for some reason, does more than keep up with inflation while all the rest of us don't get a pay raise. Funny how that works. I forget what the numbers were, but the average congressman's office furniture budget is big enough to solve, hunger and homelessness in some small cities. And that's not even their pay. That's their allowance to buy desks and chairs. There's a lot of shit we could do in Congress. Term limits are the tip of the iceberg to me. I'm going to make this one a short one because I really didn't put that much thought into it, but this is a call to action for lambdog76. You seem to have a good head on your shoulders, and you're the one who brought this subject up, so what would you do? Because my solution is, we'll appoint a dictator. Or at least use these dictatorial powers to, enforce our will on the House, the Senate, and the judiciary. Or maybe just the House and the Senate, because I honestly feel that you could pass Supreme Court reform in the House and the Senate, especially if we have majorities. There'd even be some Democrats that joined in on that shit. And what do you think the term limits should be for all of these people? Congressmen, senators, and Supreme Court justices. I'd be curious to hear that, because you could make arguments on both sides that making really short-term limits would completely kill the idea of career politicians, and I like that. However, you can also make the argument that if no one's been in Washington for more than a term, that no one's going to know how the fuck to do anything. Like, do we destroy ourselves by saying you can only be a congressman for 2 terms? You can only be a senator for 1 term? I think that would be a little extreme, and it would cause a breakdown in the machine. It would lead to a bunch of very inexperienced people running the country, but maybe that would be good too. I don't know. So hit me up, Lambdog. What do you think? I'll see you guys later.